Shalom and welcome to Genesis chapter 16. There are 16 verses. Verse 4, we read, her mistress, meaning Sarai, it says here. Her mistress was dishonored before her. So Sarai was dishonored before Hagar, whereas in the MT it says that her mistress, Sarai, was despised in her eyes. So to understand the word despised means that she was hated. Basically, a lot of people would understand it to mean Sarai was hated, that Hagar hated her. Where we don't see that in the Septuagint. It's not saying that at all. It's saying that in a culture like the Middle East or a lot of Eastern cultures, there's a culture of honor and shame. And those who have done good deeds, have good reputation, they have honor. Those who are doing wicked deeds or not able to do good, they have a less honor, they have shame. In this case, it doesn't say that Sarai had shame, it says she was dishonored before her. So the way I understand this is that Sarai had a greater amount of honor, whereas Hagar had a greater amount of honor. Sarai had a lower amount of honor. So in comparison, she was dishonored compared to Hagar. That's the way I understand that verse, and it makes more sense when you read it that way, according to this translation. So in verse 6, we see that Sarai afflicted her. She afflicted her, and she fled from her face as a result. And in the MT it says Sarai dealt hardly with her. Now those are very similar terms, so I'm not going to harp on that too much, but just wanted to bring that out because it is different. Verse 11, we read here, the humiliation. Jehovah has listened to your humiliation, speaking to Hagar. Whereas in the MT it says your affliction. So she was humiliated, which I relate more to the quality of being humbled. She is meek. She humbled herself versus affliction. So I know in our vernacular, we understand humiliation to mean that you were embarrassed, basically. Maybe that is so, but she was she fled from Sarai because she was afflicted. When someone's afflicted, normally we associate that with humbling yourself. When someone afflicts themselves, for example, when fasting, someone's fasting, they wear sackcloth, they put on ashes, they don't eat, they don't drink, they humble themselves instead of the opposite, which is to puff oneself up, to be arrogant. So that's verse 11 there. Verse 13, we see, for I have openly seen that him that appeared to me. These are the words of Hagar. Versus the MT, which says, have I also here looked after him that sees me? ? This doesn't make sense because in the context of the story, Hagar did not even know where she was going. The angel asked her, what are you doing? Where do you come from? She said, I'm fleeing from Sarai, but also says that, she doesn't know where she's going to. I mean, she went there, but she didn't really have any place else to go. So why would she be looking for him if she didn't know where she was going, or if she just fled? It wasn't a plan. She didn't pre-plan fleeing. So it makes more sense when we read it in the Septuagint. It says that she called on the name of Jehovah Elohim who spoke to her, You are Elohim who sees me. For she said, for I've openly seen him that appeared to me. So she's seen him, or representative of him, being the angel of Jehovah. And she called that place by that name. And we see that reiterated in the next verse. But it's important to note that she didn't find him, or she didn't look for him, I should say. It was he who found her there, because it was the angel that found her. It says right there in verse 16, in both versions, an angel of Jehovah found her. It says it in both. So how can she find him? How can she be the one who looked after him, as it says in verse 13 of the MT, when clearly she was the one who was found? So I find that just confusing if you don't take the original text, the original scriptures. And in verse 14, the final verse we're going to look at, it says here, the well of him whom I have openly seen. So she called the name of the well of him whom I have openly seen, in the empty Bir Lahai Rawi, which most likely is a translation. If you translate it, it means that. So how can the previous verse be true if the well itself is even a dedication to that event, whom she has seen, who found her, basically? So that's all I have to say about this chapter. This is chapter 16. Stay tuned for chapter 17 coming soon. So this is mostly about Hagar and her situation. So I'm going to look for a picture to use, a thumbnail. I thank you for listening. May Jehovah bless you and make your way prosperous. May you love him. May he give you a heart to love him with all your mind, all your strength, all your soul. May you love your neighbor as Yehoshua loved us. And I just thank you for your time. And until next time, Genesis chapter 17 will be next.